Welcome to this meeting of the Council. I'm Councillor Elizabeth Malvisi, Chair of Babergh District Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting this evening. First of all, may I remind you of some domestic arrangements. Toilets are situated outside the meeting room, opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to so do. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, member of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I now wish to move to the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Simon Dowling, Councillor Lee Jamieson, Councillor Mark Newman, Councillor Stephen Plum, Councillor Adrian Osborne, Councillor John Nunn, Councillor Margaret Maybury, Councillor Peter Beer and Councillor Alistair Owen.
Thank you. Now, declaration of interests by councillors. Are there any declarations? Okay, we can now move on to paper BC 2423 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 29th of October 2024. This is for accuracy only. So, does anyone have issues regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Saw, and a seconder, Councillor Davis. And by a show of hands, can I have your vote? Okay. Thank you very much. And that's carried. Now, we have announcements from the Chair and the Leader. I refer you to paper BC 2424 for noting, and thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor Saw to make her announcements as Leader.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I would like to congratulate the winners and all the finalists for the Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Innovation Awards. These awards recognise and celebrate the outstanding firms and entrepreneurs in our district. They shine a light on those firms and individuals who are pushing the boundaries, finding new sustainable solutions to old problems and breaking new ground. This approach was evident in the event the Council hosted together with Community Energy South in Sudbury recently. As a Council, we want to establish more community energy schemes. This is where people come together using local resources to manage or generate energy for their community. For example, they can focus on improving the energy efficiency of homes, or working together to put solar panels on a village hall or school and using the energy generated to power other facilities. They are committed to helping end fuel poverty and responding to climate change. This was a well-attended meeting with lots of enthusiasm and people signing up to learn more. So I am hopeful that we will have community energy schemes in a variety of villages and neighbourhoods going forward. Last week, Councillor Smith and I attended the first Suffolk Food Summit organised by ILGA at the Food Museum in Stowmarket. This was very well attended with a broad range of experts, growers and activists for a full morning of inspiring speakers, informed debate and challenging workshops to shape the future of food in Suffolk. There were discussions on topics such as increasing access to healthy, affordable food for our residents, tackling the nature and climate emergency through sustainable food and farming, and putting an end to food waste. Given the challenges that farmers face currently, there were some good connections made to drive forward some new partnership initiatives. Our climate change team organised a very stimulating event with students from Babergh and Mid-Suffolk schools. These 13 to 14-year-olds organised themselves into national delegations and ran their own COP29. They followed that up by grilling Councillor Mellon and me, as well as representatives from local businesses, in a question time session, and they didn't go easy on us. As a council, we know that we may not have the financial resources of some of our peers, but we do have influence and convening power, as well as ambitions to lead debates rather than be mere followers, which is why tomorrow we will be holding a summit with the majority of social housing companies that operate in Babergh and Mid-Suffolk to discuss and find solutions to the challenge of Section 106 affordable homes, which have been the single largest method of delivering those homes in the past. A solution needs to be found, or this will seriously disrupt our and the government's housing plans. Together, we and the social housing providers will prepare a list of asks for government. And finally, devolution. We have now had it confirmed that the government's preferred structure for devolution is a combined authority led by a directly elected mayor, and we will get a white paper later this year or early next year on English devolution. The four Suffolk District Councils and Ipswich Borough Council remain committed to working in partnership with the county, neighbouring authorities and the government to get the best outcomes for all Suffolk residents. The white paper, which I said may be published by the end of this month or even next week or sometime in December or in the new year, is likely to incorporate local government reorganisation. I quote, to move to simpler structures that make sense for their local areas, with efficiency savings from council reorganisation helping to meet the needs of local people. This may pose a threat to district councils, with local government moving further away from our local residents. This seems the opposite of devolution to me. Devolution is difficult enough without adding the complexity of local government reorganisation. To my mind, that's a recipe for indigestion. Thank you.
Are there any points or questions for clarification? Or we shall move on. To receive notification of petitions in accordance with council procedure rules?
None received.
Thank you. And questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules?
None received.
Thank you. Questions by councillors in accordance with council procedure rules?
None received, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now move forward to paper BC 2425, the annual Treasury Management Report for 2023-24. I would like to invite Councillor Hurren, co-chair of Joint Audit and Standards Committee, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Councillor Hurren.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, councillors. It's my pleasure to present this report and to move it for noting and to ask for a seconder. I have with me here this evening two officers, Melissa Evans and her assistant, Alice de Greer, should there be any questions that need answering. This is the Joint Treasury Management Report covering the Treasury Management Outturn position for the financial year 23 and up to April 24. It provides details of the Treasury management activity and performance during that year, instances of non-compliance with the Council's Treasury management policy, economic background. This is covered in pages 23 to 26 of the report, And the key points here to highlight are UK inflation declined from 8.7 at the start of the year to 3.4 at the end. And while that was going on, the UK base rate increased from 4.25 to 5.25 at the end of that year. Pages 26 to 28 give an overview of the local context. The headline figures here are the net borrowing requirement, which was 113.3 million. That was measured as the capital financial requirements, the underlying need to borrow, less the usable reserves and working capital, the underlying resources available for investment. Net borrowing was actually 114.8 million at the end of that year. Pages 29 to 31 give more details of the Council's long-term and short-term borrowings, and 30 to 32 provide more details of the Council's short-term as well as long-term investment. The particular points here to note are the statutory overriding on accounting for gains and losses on pooled funds, which is due to expire next year in March. The UBS pooled fund closed in September with a one-off cost of approximately £500,000 for the Council, representing the loss in value of the Council's original investment. Pages 22 to 30 also provide more details of the Council's non-financial investments, which are the Babergh growth. It is anticipated there will be a loss of around 3 million on the housing development scheme at Hadley, at the old HQ. Work is underway here to identify the impact on the general fund of this loss and over how long a period the loss can be charged to the revenue budget. Pages 31 to 36 is about our compliance with the Council's prudential and Treasury indicators, and the specific instances of non-compliance are described on pages 31, 32 and 33. The two instances described on pages 31 and 32 did not expose either Council to any significant ongoing risk of financial loss. With regard to the interest rate exposure non-compliance for Babergh, it has become apparent that there was an error in the calculation of the target indicator. It is therefore difficult to measure the performance against this measure in a meaningful way. The actual performance, however, is not considered to indicate any significant risk to Babergh's financial position. Policy on apportioning interest on internal borrowing investments between the Housing Revenue Account, the HRA, and the General Fund. Page 45 sets this out as an adjustment to this policy, which is considered necessary to bring the methodology into line with best practice now. Council is asked to approve this amendment and also approve that it be retrospectively applied to the financial years 2021 and up to 22-24, which is this year we're debating now. The report concludes, Madam Chairman, with a range of prudential indicators set out on page 47 to 51. I'm happy to propose these for noting, Madam Chairman, and ask for a seconder. Thank you. That includes the introduction. And I've got two members of the financial staff to answer questions should any arise. Thank you.
Councillors, we now move to questions. And as you know, you can ask as many as you want. But as you know, they have to be a question. And they must not be of a personal or commercial nature. So, Councillor Riley, you're on your feet already.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can we go to page 38 and 39 of this report, please? And my questions are going to be quite brief this evening. We're there. So, table 8.1, our investments in the CCLA, we're showing a loss of £500,000 as at 31st of March. Our investment in Schroeder Performance was showing a loss of just under £400,000 for the same date. And as we know, our investment in the UBS Performance was showing £500,000 also as at the 31st of March. So my question is, Councillor Harron, were you monitoring these losses? What was the strategy for holding on to them or not? And were we receiving current valuations or continual valuations, or were we asleep at the wheel?
Hope, Councillor Riley, we certainly weren't asleep at the wheel, but if I call in Melissa, I'm sure she has got all the answers to your question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, no, we certainly weren't asleep at the wheel. And the reason we put these tables in there is to demonstrate what the capital value is of those investments. So that's what you're seeing in the tables there. I think it's fair to say what you're not seeing is the cumulative interest receivable that we've seen since we've had those investments. And actually it might be quite helpful in reports going forward if we showed that as well, so you could see overall we are making a positive return on those investments, but what you're focusing on there is the capital loss, not the overall profit of those investments. So I think going forward, I think if we show that, that might be a bit clearer to show that we are actually making a profit on those investments. And also that capital loss that you're seeing there will not materialise unless we sell those investments. So the case with UBS, obviously we have crystallised that loss, but those ones we're continuing to hold for the longer term return that we're getting back to the general fund.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Looking back at the cold weather, I'm partially deaf, but I accept, the sense of what you say here. But bearing in mind we have £1.5 million of losses, was there a decision taken not to recognise these losses in last year's accounts, and that we should carry the losses forward? And does this conform with SIPFCA recommendations?
Yes, please.
They're not actually losses at the moment, they're paper losses. And with the change to the statutory override, the recommendation from SIPFA is that we do actually account for that loss, and we provide, should that come to fruition, that those investments close or we sell them. So we will be recommending in the budget report that we set aside a reserve should that happen to mitigate against that risk.
Maybe we can throw it to the other side and see if anybody has a question, then I can come back to you. No? Councillor Busby.
I'll help Brian out. So we understand that there potentially will be a loss if we sell these. At what point did we anticipate that there would be a loss? And was there a decision made at that time whether to retain and maintain the investment or to sell them then?
Yeah, as we get the valuations through and we report these through, if it was making a loss, it would be a really bad decision if we were to sell that, because we would then lose that capital that we'd invested. So I think the right thing, and I don't think anyone in this room would want me to sell those investments while they were below market value of what we paid for them.
Unless they're withdrawn.
I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen. Hopefully the markets will pick back up again, and we have seen times where they were valued for higher than what we paid for them. So, they are long-term investments by nature. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just so I got this right, it's a very simple question. Am I correct in thinking that we made no reserves in the accounts as at 31st of March for these losses? Thank you.
Any more questions? Can we move to debate? Councillor Clover.
Thank you, Chair. If I can take you to page 44, we've got the maturity structures there. Now, in the first row there, we've got under 12-month age profile of maturity. That's nearly a third of all the investments there. And of course, it depends on when you come out of these markets as to whether it's a good deal or a bad deal. So is that an acceptable level of investment in those ones that are under 12 months?
I think those investments, those loans were taken with other local authorities. So when we do that, we look at what borrowing we might need and we look for the best rates that we can possibly get. So at the time, those were the best deals. So I don't think it's a risk to have that much short term, but you know, that's the situation we found ourselves in, and the best deals at the time to get the lowest interest rates.
Yes. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, page 35, 2.3 investment property. I think we mentioned this last year. Babergh's in there, but what about our other properties? Our leisure centres, Suffolk Business Park. There's no note about them, about income, costs, and valuations. Would it be prudent to have those included going forward?
I think in terms of the way they're classified in our statement of accounts, those other assets are not classified as investment properties, whereas Babergh was entered into as an investment property asset. So that's why we've brought it into the strategy here. I think it would be quite unwieldy if we tried to do that with all of the assets, but I take on board the sentiment, and we can have a look at that with Jas.
Debate. You know, councillors, you can speak once, but for 3 minutes maximum. Councillor Ward?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to add a few more words to help Councillor Riley in his understanding of our investments. What you've got to remember is that as Melissa has said, that notional loss at the moment, 1.5 million, needs to be set against a cumulative interest that we have received of 3.2 million so far. So we're up 1.7 million should we sell those now. But of course, we have no intention of selling those investments. We're going to retain them. And the reason why we're going to retain them, because if you see in those tables, starting on page 38, CCLA, average rate of return, 4.74%. Schroeder, 5.72%. These are providing us with excellent returns, and so the interest is most welcome and is as good as you'll get probably anywhere. And so I fully expect that to continue in the years to come, and for these investments to keep on providing us with that very needed and welcome interest.
Any else? Remember, we're debating. No questions.
Should I finish questions? I'm responding to a comment. We're open for comments. Not yet.
We are in debate, but because it's you, Councillor Riley, very briefly, go for it.
Well, I thank Councillor Ward for his advices on how I should understand investments. And, you know, I try to avoid investments that carry a loss. And I try to avoid investments that continue carrying a loss. And as we're going to find out later on, if you carry investments showing a loss, you're living in cloud cuckoo land. You know, the question comes here is that we are underwater by £1.5 million. We were at the 31st of March, and we decided not to provide for any losses, but to carry on holding them at face value. And we did not recognise our potential losses. We did not make a reserve.
Because the report asks both councils to note the report. And then, I think on page 45, item 1.10, it is to adopt the report. So what are you debating?
What I'm thinking, Madam Chairman, is, I mean, I can't adopt this report. I cannot even note it, you know, because it's incomplete, you know. and so I will sit down, you know. But it's a nonsense that we don't recognise our losses when we have them, that we live in a cow cuckoo land, and that we're...
You said you'd sit down.
We're running our losses.
Councillor McCraw.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for presenting the report, Councillor Hurren. Actually, I think it's very important to note, every time we get one of these annual reports, and the 6 monthly report we're also going to consider tonight, that we do forget we've got an Audit and Standards Committee that's already been through this. And that is the venue at which one can ask such questions and debate what our investment strategies should be. Now, the principle of investing for an income is well established. It's the principle under which SIFCO operates. It's the principle under which all our funds have operated for years. As Councillor Ward has pointed out, we're receiving interest. That interest has been useful. We've used it. Believe me, we've used it. And again, it's simple economics. I've only got a higher in economics, so not a great qualification. It was a Scottish higher, though, so it's obviously superior quality. The point I'm making is I understood this in the 1 year that I took to do that. You invest, your capital value doesn't matter as long as you have a reasonable expectation of making it back and received an income in the meantime. And if you live in a house and you're not selling it, the capital value of it hardly matters at all. What matters is the running costs and how it works for you, what it does for you. In this case, to live in our case, to live on the interest. So fundamentally, this is arguing in circles, and I would suggest to Councillor Riley in future that if he wants to ask these questions, he brings it up at Audit and Standards, where it can be examined in greater detail. That's why we are noting this. We're not here to take the work away from our committees. I know some people are very keen on committees. Let's give them a chance to do their job. And I thank Councillor Hurren and the Audit and Standard Committee for consistently doing that job.
Any other councillor wish to debate? Councillor Register.
Yes. So the questions here are, we've seen had a capital loss on these funds. The question is, what investment vehicle or fund has 0 losses and actually creates the rate of return that you get from the funds that we've invested in? Nobody could have foreseen UBS happening unless you were the Swiss government, because you knew and you might have done what their Office of Budget Responsibility would have guessed. But in this instance, no. All of these are just paper unrealised losses, and therefore, unless you have a better idea of where to invest with 0 loss, the amounts that we invest, and ethically, of course, I just don't see the point in this discussion.
You've had your chance at debate, I'm sorry. Anybody else wish to debate?
Madam Chairman, may I ask why the comment was directed at me, but I can't answer?
I don't think that's a question or a comment for debate. But you certainly can discuss it after the meeting's concluded. I think we'll now move to the chair, but before we do that, Councillor Holt?
Thank you.
Yes.
Very much. I don't necessarily agree with Councillor McCraw. I think the full council's here to ask questions on papers. It's not reliant on a committee to do that. Otherwise, why do we bother being here? So I think the full council has the opportunity to debate, has the opportunity to ask questions. To close it down in the manner you did is belittling to this authority and to this council, and it's not very welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Hurren, do you wish to wrap up? Oh, Councillor Busby.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that, Michael. I think we were a bit harsh. Obviously, the right place to go into the huge detail is to audit and standards, because that's their purpose. But if it comes to full council, then we should be expected to give some kind of review and ask questions on the paper if we're not satisfied with what we can see before us. From my point of view, I guess it's my age-old gripe. It's a paper full of data. Data doesn't tell me anything. I would like more information, more knowledge from a paper. One thing that would be useful is perhaps a section of the 6 things that have changed since the last paper. Because, you know, we get all this stuff and this rate's 5 and it was 5.25 and it goes through. There's so much information in here, or so much data in here, it's difficult to pick out really what we should be looking at. So, if we could, maybe half a dozen things that have changed significantly, or what the key points that you want us to get from this paper. Because it's certainly not that Barclays' rate's gone up from 5 to 5.25, or it's AAA down from AA, whatever, because we can't do anything with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Busby. Melissa, is that something that you can look at, your team can look at? Good. Councillor Horan, would you like to round up this session?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It'll be a pleasure. I do slightly agree with Councillor Busby, but I think at the moment the officers are a bit strapped for time. There's been some catching up to do. As you see in here, there's been some better methods introduced with the accounts in the last 3 years. So I'm confident we're on the right path. Yes, they could be more, the paper could be more sexy, I guess, if you want that, but the committee are doing that, I assure you. And I was going to speak earlier and reply to Councillor Riley's comments. It's the turbulent times we're in. 2 Prime Ministers ago, the economy was crashed and trashed a little bit, wasn't it? And everything is a bit shaky at the moment, but as in SIFCO, it's not always the value of what you have, it's the earning power that it has. And that's what's keeping this council afloat to a large, you know, I don't need to remind you of the return from SIFCO. The value of what we own may have gone down, but the earning power seems to be standing up. And heaven knows where this council would be if it wasn't for those sort of things. It would probably be 20% at least on the council tax. And I think members need to be aware of where we are. We're in choppy waters, but we're keeping afloat and keeping afloat well. And the committee of which I'm chair, I know my name is on the paper, but we've got some, in the last 6 years, I think we've made tremendous progress in what we do, working with the officers. So I'm proud to present it and to propose that it's all for noting, and the work will carry on as it should. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote. Henriette.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. The first vote is for recommendation 3.1 to 3.4, because those recommendations are for both councils, and we will do that vote first. Thank you. Councillor Riley, may I take your vote, please?
No.
Thank you, members. That's 19 votes for, 2 against, and 2 abstentions. Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you, members. We'll now start the second part of the voting. This is for the recommendation 3.5, which is for Babergh only, and that vote is now in progress. Councillor Riley, may I take your vote, please? Councillor Riley, may I take your vote, please?
Oh, against.
Against, thank you. Thank you, members. That's 19 votes for, 2 votes against, and 2 abstentions, so that vote is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Henriette. We now move to paper BC 2426, the half-year report on Treasury Management 2024-25. I'd like to invite Councillor Hurrand, co-chair of the Joint Audit and Standards Committee, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Hurrand.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. We move on. We're into this year now, and here is the report. This is the Joint Treasury Management Report covering the first half of this financial year, 24-25. It provides details for the half year of the Treasury management activities, any instance of non-compliance with the Council's Treasury management policy, the economic background, that's on page 58. The key point to highlight there is the UK base interest rate was cut from 5.25 to 5% in August, and I think it's since gone down another 0.5%. Page 59 gives an overview of the local context. Table 1 shows the capital financing requirements of each council and the financing of this from external and internal borrowing as at the end of March this year. These figures will be reset when we produce the complete Treasury outturn report. Paragraph 3.4 shows the net borrowing for each council as at September just gone. The net borrowing was actually 107 million, 107.9 million. Pages 60 to 62 covers the Council's borrowing strategy and activity. And on page 60 you'll find some general commentary, and pages 61 to 62 show the breakdown of the borrowing portfolio and the average interest rate incurred. The investment activity is on pages 62 to 73 and covers short-term and long-term investment activity, and 63 to 64 provide a breakdown of the balance and performance of all the investments. 65 to 67 is a breakdown of the balances and performance of the externally managed pooled funds, and the end at 67 reports the impact of the closure of the UBS pooled fund on the 16th of September, where the Council has sustained a one-off cost of approximately £500,000, representing the loss in value of the Council's original investment. This is one that has been cashed in, but it did receive good interest during its lifetime. 60 to 70 pages, the key points there are around Babergh growth. There will be, anticipated, there will be a loss of around 3.4 million, representing loans and 1.1 million interest. The councils will need to charge a forecast of 2.3 million in minimum revenue provision to its revenue budget if the company cannot fully repay the loan. This obviously refers to the old HQ, Babergh's HQ at Hadley. Discussions will take place with the Council's external auditors regarding the time period over which it would be prudent to spread this charge. Compliance on 70 to 73 presents the Council's performance against their prudential and Treasury indicators and assess the compliance with them. The one incident of non-compliance is described on page 73, although this is not considered to be material enough to expose the Council to any significant risk of financial loss. Now, that includes the introduction to the report, Madam Chairman. It's all pretty dry, boring stuff, I know, but it's all work that's been done, and I recommend it to the Council, and pleased to propose the noting of this paper. Thank you.
Seconder, please. Councillor Ward. I now open the floor to questions. And for fear of repeating myself, you can ask as many questions as you wish, but they do have to be a question on this paper. Councillor Busby.
Thank you, Chair. Appendix B, Table 3 borrowing position, it's page 61. Local authority short-term 41 million at the end of March, and it's come down to 29 million as at the end of September. Given the fact that most local authorities are probably in the same kind of financial state as we are we confident that this source of funds will still be available going forward?
Mr. Greer, are you responding, are you? Thank you very much.
Yes, I am. Yes, I mean, there's a ready supply of funds within the local authority market. The interest rate varies depending upon the supply and demand of funds. We're in a position at the moment where the demand for funds is exceeding supply, and therefore sort of interest rates within the local authority market are I mean, they're averaging about sort of 5.25%. Yes, the funds will always be there. I think that the issue is around the interest rate that we have to pay to access those funds.
Thank you. Anybody else have a question? Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, let's go to page 66 and 67. And there's an echo of the past. Of course, we have CCLA losing money substantially, Schroeder's losing money substantially, and the UBS multi-asset fund lost money completely. No reserves for possible losses. And moreover, we have seen that income go straight to revenue and get spent. So saying that, for example, for the UBS, that we have a net positive reserve of 266,000, in fact, realise the fact that we've spent a lot more than that. And, and this will hit our bottom line full stop. But coming back to this, and I'm sure Councillor can tell me, so if we look at UBS, we look at these others actually, their performance over the last 6 months, not spectacular. We know that we have the ability to call this money in at relatively short notice. And the question is, I'm getting there, the question is, did we consider calling the money in, or did we just let things run?
I think, Councillor Riley, as always, it's a question of judgment, but I'm sure Melissa will back me up on that one.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I said earlier, we're holding these investments for the long term, and hopefully the markets will pick up and they will, will rise again. But there's no sensible reason or explanation for us to cash them in and lose the money now, when we would rather wait and see if those pick back up, and we will continue to report those through to JASC and to Council as well.
No more questions? Anyone else? Councillor Holt?
Page 69, 2111, 2112 Babergh. As Councillor Hurren mentioned, it's noted there a 7.6 million loss. We know that's gone up. And he explained that we're awaiting on it and close on the advice. When are we likely to get that advice? And what sort of impact do you suspect that will have on the general fund going forward? As obviously anything that will impact on all our residents having to pay for that. It does mention up to 30 years, so when are you expecting that advice, or when can this council expect to hear what that is?
Thank you. So we have given a paper to our external auditors, EY, and they are looking at that at the moment. We do want a decision before we set the budget in February so that we can build that into the budget. At the moment, we have a reserve that will cover the first 9 years of that loss. So, you know, hopefully things will be okay. But obviously, after those 9 years, we will need to build that into the budget. So we're just waiting to see that the auditors will agree with that treatment of 30 years.
Thank you. Councillor McCraw?
Thank you, Chair. Just as a point of clarification on Councillor Holt's question, because I'm looking at paragraph 211 on page 69, could I ask Melissa to confirm that we're not talking about a loss of 7.6 million. That, in fact, describes the loans that we've made as at the 30th of September 2024. And the prospective loss, and it is only prospective, has already been described as somewhere in the region of 3 million, but I just don't think it should be necessary. I think we have to challenge the 7.6 million being misquoted. Could you confirm that, Melissa?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't hear the first part of Councillor Holt's question, so I didn't hear that you quoted the 7.6 million. Yeah, obviously we think it may be in the region of 3 million, but until those houses are sold, we don't know what the actual loss will be. So in the region of 3 million is what we're speculating at the moment.
Any other questions? Councillor Holt?
We do have it documented at 3.5, so perhaps we should work to 3.5 at the moment.
3.5? Do you wish to comment on that? So that was a comment, not a question.
3.5. Just saying it has been documented at 3.5.
Any other questions? We'll now move to debate. Who would like to start the debate? Are we going to move to the vote? Councillor Ward?
Yeah, just going back to the pooled funds and the provision for the notional loss. It is, as has been explained, Councillor Riley, it is quite appropriate that we don't make any provision in the general fund at this stage, because we have no idea the value of those funds when we're going to sell them. But the UBS fund we have, and you'll see when the Q2 general fund monitoring comes out, that there is a £500,000 provision now in the general fund for the current year for that. And that's appropriate because we've now divested ourselves of that fund, albeit not voluntarily, but we're now realising that loss in the general fund. However, for that fund, over its lifetime, it has given us over £260,000 net after taking account the interest we've received. So that's a net gain on that fund. And has been pointed out, not just that, but all the other interests and net gains on all of those funds together are a vital and necessary contribution to our general fund, without which we would be in a much worse position. So the funds are doing their job.
Thank you. Anyone else to debate? You can debate, yeah.
Yeah, just one thing on the investments.
Not a question, debate.
Yeah?
Yeah? Okay.
I'm just saying, on the investments, there are maturities with fixed time frames. Is that correct? Because there's some there with 12 months, 10 to 20 years, etc., etc. Not the pool funds. I was just saying, if they're fixed terms, that's slightly different to SIFCO, which we brought into the conversation earlier. which is our asset, we can retain forever and a day. But if they're a fixed term, then we do need to be mindful of what the consequences might be.
Anybody else wish to debate? Or can I go to Councillor Hurren to ask him if he wishes to add anything?
Thank you very much, Chair. Not much to say on this one, except it's all in the papers, really. I would say that I know the officers are in constant contact with Arlene Close, our advisors. You know, it's a two-way debate all the time. And I have to say, the advice in my time of chair, 5 years, running it to 6, has always been pretty good. I don't think they've put a foot wrong yet. And in very difficult circumstances, as we are all in, I think we value their advice, and in the main, we go by it. All it really remains for me to say is to thank the officers. We have got, there may not be many of them, but I think we've got a pretty super treasurer and audit team at Babergh. There's not many of them, and that worries me, and I have had talks with the chief exec. We are sort of on a very slim tightrope, to be honest, but they are doing what they do, and they do well, and we're hoping to beef up the committee, the Audit and Standards Committee, so that what we do in-house, I feel, is always going to be good. What happens outside, we don't have much control over, to be honest, but we do our best with the cloth that we're given to cut, and I think we punch well above our weight and do quite well, so I'm quite happy to propose this paper and ask for a seconder, please.
We have a seconder in Councillor Ward. I will now move to the vote, and I'll ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct an electronic vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress, and Councillor Riley, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you, members. That's 20 votes for, 1 vote against, and 2 abstentions, so that's carried, Chair.
We now move to paper BC 2427. Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Housing Supplementary Planning Document for adoption. I'd like to invite Councillor Sally Davis, Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendation in the report. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. One of the most important duties of this council is to guide development through the planning system.
Could I ask you to project your voice?
It's not on there. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Right, okay. So one of the most important duties of this council is to guide development through the planning system and to ensure that housing needs are met. That's housing needs, not housing demand. Housing demand is driven by wealth. It comes from those who have existing funds and have access to mortgage facilities. Housing need is different. It relates to the growing numbers of people in our district who do not have existing funds and cannot access mortgage facilities. If we're going to create places where people can live healthy and secure lives, where everyone can thrive and have a chance to be part of their communities, we need to ensure that we're delivering the right homes. And to that end, I am pleased to recommend the adoption of this housing supplementary planning document for use in determining planning applications in the district. Members will be aware that a supplementary planning document, or SPD, is used in planning decision-making to provide guidance on the way in which the policies of the adopted Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Joint Local Plan are to be interpreted.
This SPD focuses on the housing policies of the joint local plan and will help us consider the most appropriate housing mixes for the sites coming forward in the district, how we can best secure affordable housing. Our preferences are 80% of market rent, however affordable or not that is, or shared ownership. It allows us to consider how we can best use our positive planning policies to help communities deliver their own housing proposals. It helps us consider proposals for self-build development and demand for custom and self-build projects. It allows us to look at financial contributions towards off-site affordable housing provision and many other matters of technical detail, as you will see set out in the document before you. This document was subject to public consultation between May and June of this year, and amendments were made to the document as a result of this process. You can see these in the appendices of the papers before you. And members will be able to see the details of the comments. We had 16 respondents and the resulting changes. Also, in addition to the papers in the main agenda, there's one further recommendation in the additional tabled papers, which enables officers to tidy up any typing errors spotted in the documents. Officers Robert Hobbs and Robert Feeks are here to answer any questions. These documents have to be written very, very carefully, and they have gone through these, as usual, in their usual very conscientious way. So I'm sure that, like me, all members here this evening are committed to the delivery of the right homes in the right places. This SPD will help us to deliver on this commitment, so I recommend the adoption of this SPD in line with the recommendation 3.1 in the report and the additional recommendation in 3.2.
Thank you very much. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Saw. The floor is now open to questions, as many as you wish. You do that on purpose. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the paper. My question is about the section about management in section 4.6. You it's mentioned that registered providers will manage these houses, but we're hearing a lot in the country about the registered providers, housing associations and so on are in difficulty. Does this paper address those issues, please?
Yes, if you look at 4.6, we retain the right to actually nominate a registered provider if a developer fails to find one. So there are a range of measures in place to help find registered providers. And of course, we've got the summit tomorrow, which addresses this very question. We're trying to find constructive and maybe creative ways to work with registered providers, but it is addressed in this paper because we are aware of that problem.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Riley, then Councillor Busby.
Just a very quick, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just a very quick question. Page 76 and page 77. At the bottom of page 76, we say that the responders include the Ballymore Group and 2 private individuals. And then over on page 77, we also have, is that another 2 private individuals or the same private individuals?
I will refer that to the officers.
Thank you. For you, Chair. That's different individuals. So the Ballymore Group and 2 private individuals control a land interest, and that's their representation. And then at the end, it's 2 further private individuals. But what planning authorities do is refer to people who make representations as private individuals unless they're a company.
Yes.
Sorry, Madam Chairman. Just trying to get clarification for my own purpose only. Is your distance on this sound system? So do we have 4 private individuals responding or just 2?
So we have 2 private individuals who responded to the consultation,
And then we have the Ballymore Group and 2 private individuals who responded through their planning agent. That's one response. So if it was 3 people making a response through their planning agent, the same response once.
Councillor Busby, then Councillor Carter.
Housing need. We've identified, as we all probably know the figure off the top of our head, that 416 is the annual target that we need to achieve to deliver the houses that we've agreed is our target. However, the government have made a mockery of that by putting it up by whatever it is, 40%, and we're now looking at 763, potentially, houses per year. My concern is this premature, having this paper now? I mean, it's all well and good having a paper, a supplementary planning document, which is designed to deliver 416 houses a year, but if the target has changed to 763, we might need to rethink the way we do that, and therefore, is it wise to have a second go at it, or should we wait until we're certain what the number is?
NPPF is not out yet. Our advice is to carry on doing what we are doing, because we've got to land the Joint Local Plan Part 2 in time. So we've been advised to keep on going. But I think I'm going to hand that over to the officers as to what effect a new NPPF will have on this supplementary planning document.
Thank you, Chair. So the Joint Local Plan Part 1 is the adopted development plan document for the districts. That sets the housing requirement of policy SPO1 of 460 dwellings. What we're doing here is supplementary planning documents have to have a policy hook, an adopted document, which is in the Part 1 plan. If we don't have that policy hook, then we can't produce the supplementary planning document. That's why we're presenting it to you today. So we're still in the current planning system, effectively, for the Part 1, Part 2 plans and the supplementary planning documents. We're moving to a new planning system through the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act, and this is where the new National Planning Policy Framework is coming in, which will be material to us in planning decisions and in future plan making in the new system. So what we're effectively doing is bringing forth supplementary planning documents to help interpret our existing development plan policy, which is what planning decisions are currently made against.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you. How are we ensuring compliance with the affordable housing requirements in the development proposals?
There are a number of measures we have in this SPD to make sure that we get the affordable housing that we need. There's obviously the 35% requirement on developments over 10 dwellings. But apart from that, there are measures in here that talk about how we don't want the clumping of too many affordable houses together in a development, that they should be design neutral, they shouldn't look different than all the other houses around them, that there should be access to all areas of the site from the affordable housing. There is a measure in there that gives, that makes over 50% of the affordable housing must be accessible to the largest number of people. So that is building regulation M4 something. I'm going to handle it. Yeah, and so there are measures in there to make sure they're built. It will be the very last resort that we take commuted sums rather than that they're built. We've also got measures in there that allow a developer to build off-site if they really, really can't build on the site. So there's a number of things in this paper to ensure that we do get all the requirements of affordable housing that we need. I don't know if the officers want to add anything to that. No? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Councillor Busby.
Actually, on the same vein, really, affordable housing. We all know that affordable housing isn't affordable. What's the point of having a supplementary planning document which is designed to deliver 35% affordable housing when we know we're not going to get 35% affordable housing? What we need is social housing. There's nothing in here that says, well, if they can't deliver 35% affordable housing, we could negotiate down to 20% social housing or 15% social housing. Is it important that, to me, it would seem more sense to have 20 social houses which we can use rather than 35% affordable houses which we can't? I just think it's not practical to just focus on affordable housing at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is a document on affordable housing. I absolutely take your point. We don't have the funds for a start to start buying social housing. It would be lovely if we did, but this is for affordable housing. Can the officers add, is this document, I don't think this document addresses that question. I think that's addressed elsewhere.
I think the key thing with an SPD is that it is, as my colleague pointed out earlier, it is hooked onto the joint local plan, which refers to that 35%. That element is set. We have, and to reduce the number of affordable homes to accept below 35% would be deviation from our adopted policies. So the SPD sort of can't go down that route to steer us to deviate from our adopted policies. The point about affordability and the affordability of different tenures ultimately comes down to the assessment of viability. And yes, affordable rent at 80% of market rents is not the most affordable tenure, and it is not as affordable as the more traditional social rent, and is not affordable to many on the lowest incomes. When affordable rent was introduced, it was introduced as a way of delivering affordable housing without public subsidy, and the compromise in effect was in the rents being paid, and that's where we are now with the way in which affordable housing is delivered. Unless there's public subsidy available, it's not really possible to deliver social rent. So the new NPPF coming out does make reference to delivery of more social rent, and I think that is something that would be considered through the review when we come to review the joint local plan.
Thank you. Councillor Davis. No, I just wondered whether you wish to respond to the comment by the officers.
No, I think that's quite a fulsome response.
Are there any more questions? Councillor Holt.
Councillor Busby is quite right. The challenge any authority has is delivering homes that are affordable, genuinely affordable. And what worries me is that we are so concentrated on the word affordable, which is undeliverable, in my view, to the many people that do actually need a home. What I don't want to see is that the word affordable, and then we have this word viability. If sites come forward that there's a viability question, then we go into the reduction of quotas, etc. And what we don't want to see is a stunt in growth. So we do need to see housing being built. But I don't think this is going to remedy the issue, which is that those that can't afford it will still not be able to afford it. We're still going to have that challenge, as I think with every other authority. And it's finding that way. You say social housing, yeah, and the officer just mentioned that possibility in the new papers that may come out from government. But I just want to make sure that as a district we're open, we're looking to develop sites, and we're not going to stifle them and stunt them coming forward with too much demand on those developers and dictating to them what we think we want and what the market dictates. The question is, will this actually deliver growth and not stunt it?
I don't think that what is the point of building houses that doesn't meet our local housing need? So it won't stunt growth with developers as long as they do what we ask them to do, which is our job to meet the local housing need. And they can come back with viability arguments, but we are very robust when developers come back with viability arguments. We look really, really carefully at those because, of course, a lot of people are very concerned that we do build the 35%. This is not about housing demand, as I said. This is about our duty is to make sure we meet our housing need. And that's what this does. It doesn't stunt growth. As long as the housing developers, if it really is not viable, come up with really solid evidence that it is not viable. Have the officers got anything to add to that? Yeah.
Thank you, Sharon. Just to reflect on both the points made by councillors there, Councillor Holt, you may wish to have a look at it's paragraph 2 to 17 on page 90 of your main reports pack there, which details where viability questions come in and the exceptional circumstances in which we would look to vary our requirements in order to seek to meet needs and balance the need to meet our needs against the need to ensure delivery as well.
Thank you. Councillor Horan, then Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I'm going to put this either into the debate or as a question, but I'll put it now. I'm sure we can find sites for 760 houses per year, and I'm sure we can get them planning permission through the system, but can we actually build them? You know, I'm somewhat in the trade, as you all know, and there's a terrible lack of skills, probably an even bigger lack of materials, and I'm sure we can put 760 houses up for a certain period of time, but can we do it constantly year upon year? And if we can't, well, what is the punishment? Does it keep getting added on year upon year? Are we confident that we can keep up with this, given the national shortage of skilled craftsmen, and we're all chasing the same materials and the price is going up? It's getting, you know, I can stick £5 worth of wood in my van and it used to cost £500, and you know, we're slightly at breaking point, and I just wonder where it's all going to end, of whether we can achieve this mass building year on year. So just an observation, colleagues, it's going to be difficult. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hearn. We're still in question, so Councillor Parker.
Excellent. No, we're good. Thank you very much. Sorry about that, everyone. So it occurs to me then, notwithstanding everything that Councillor Hurren has just said, because that's stuff that we don't know about as yet. So, but it occurs to me that with this SPD, it's a fine document, and I think it will do what we need it to do, and I'll certainly be supporting it. But really, I suppose the obvious question is we all know that the new MPF is coming. Have we got any idea when that might be coming? Because presumably we're going to have to go through this whole process all over again at that time. So have we got any idea when we're looking at that process, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's sometimes before Christmas, it's sometimes January, is it? But have we got a better idea now, Robert?
Thank you for your chair. My understanding is it would be in the week of the 16th of December, potentially, so just before Christmas. And in terms of the question about, we have to go through it again, there are transitional arrangements in the draft NPPF, so we need to wait and see what the final NPPF actually says.
Yeah, so just to clarify, we're approving this paper for a little less than a month.
the joint local plan is our adopted document. It will continue to be our adopted document until it's placed, so it doesn't just fall off a cliff in that respect. The weight that you would give different policies, that's down to the decision maker, and like any planning decisions at the moment, there's varying weights, whether there's neighbour plans there, whether there's local plans, what the National Planning Policy Framework says. So that's always part of the mix, but the supplementary planning document would have a life as long as the Part 1 plan has the life.
Thank you very much, Chair. On page 107, we talk of APR units. I wanted to specifically point out 3.3.20. APR are not subject to a covenant period, must always be secured in perpetuity. In exceptional cases, APR could be withdrawn. In such circumstances, clawback arrangements can be used to provide alternative affordable housing. My question on that is, do you anticipate using this clawback arrangement in many cases? Will we see it being used many times? Do you have confidence that we can avoid that if possible? What is your feeling going forward with that? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to pass that to the officers because I think they'll be able to give you more detail on that.
Thank you, Chair. Affordable private rent within build-to-rent schemes is not something I would envisage us delivering very much of at all. To be completely honest with you, it's not a tenure that we have delivered. I think we've permitted perhaps 2 schemes, and I don't know that they've even come to fruition yet. So it's not a tenure, to be honest, that I have a great deal of experience with. But I think that we would use this SPD to seek to put those provisions into a Section 106 agreement, and I would hope that we wouldn't have to use them. That's my best answer on that.
Of course, thank you.
Councillor Ward?
Yes, I'd just like some clarification, I think, from the Strategic Planning Head of Service. You referenced the transitional arrangements. Given where we are with an approved Part 1 of our local plan and the progress we're making with Part 2, are we confident the transitional arrangements will be fairly generous and that we won't immediately have to go into a revision of the work that's been done so far, including these the 2 supplementary planning documents this evening?
Okay, so the Part 1 plan, as I said earlier, is the adopted plan. The supplementary planning documents hang off the policy hooks in the Part 1 plan, so they will have a life as long as the Part 1 plan has, and that will have a life beyond any transitional arrangements or the new system until it is replaced, like we had the 2006 Babergh local plan until last year, for example. We need to see what the government comes out with the transition arrangements. We know that there's been a number of comments made to the government, and we have to see what comes out when they're published. But at present, we're progressing with the Part 2 plan, as has been previously advised, doing a lot of evidence work around that, and as government has said as well, they want to see local plans in place, so we'll keep going.
Thank you, Chair. On that point, Robert, just to clarify for my own understanding, as I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, NPPF would only come into effect or overrule any part of our JLP1 or our special planning documents, this one we're dealing with now, if it were in conflict with that NPPF statement. In other words, our policies, the work we've done, isn't going to be thrown away. It's only where a conflict might exist, where it's superseded, then we might, only might, have a problem. The transitional arrangements should accommodate that, but obviously that's hypothetical at the moment. But in principle, we are not going to throw this away. It will be around for a great deal longer than perhaps 2 years, because it's only where conflict exists that there is a problem. Is that correct, Robert?
That is correct, because if you, even if you have a conflict, there may be a certain policy is considered out of date, but the rest of the plan could well be very good. And we've seen that with the old local plans, like the Babergh local plan 2006, still has 4 safe policies in it, for example, because there's nothing newer. So they're still very valid, even though the majority of the plan went last year when the joint local plan was adopted. So there's always an element of conflict with when you get material consideration, local plan, neighbourhood plan maybe, and that's where again the decision making needs to weigh all that up in the balance when they're making the decision.
Thank you. We now move to debate. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Councillor Davis, when we get the MPPF and confirmation of what it consists of, can we be assured that you and the officers will come back to give us a briefing on what the contents are, so that we can all get a good understanding of what potentially lies ahead?
Yes, I'm sure we can do that.
Moving to debate, who wishes to open the debate? Councillor Register.
Yeah, on Saturday, Councillor Carter and myself and Councillor Hendry were on Market Hill, and we were speaking to people about the social housing that we plan to build in Uplands. After that, spending all day there, I pondered to myself, how much does it cost to build these houses? Because we knew the floor area. And I knew there was an easy way of calculating this because I used to work for Chartered Surveyors. So I went home and I calculated, I found out that the average build price is £2,314 per square metre. These houses were 82, and I just looked at what a house in Sudbury that's 80 square metres. So what that costs is £186,000 to build the house. It's for sale for £270,000. When we talk about viability, let's get a bit of context here. These developers are making extortionate profits on each building that they actually sell. So if they have to go and build some houses which they can't sell and make those extortionate profits, don't accept their arguments about viability. If they're making, well, by my calculation, £84,000 on a 2-bed property. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Very briefly, somebody referred during the questions to clawback arrangements and whether they ever actually, I think it was over here, whether they actually ever happen. And I just wanted to remind members that we had a planning meeting last week, Wednesday, which included some discussion of an actual clawback arrangement where a Section 106 agreement was made on the site that had been given permission many, many years ago. Now an assessment had been done and an agreement had been made for £1 million of Section 106 money in such a clawback arrangement. So the answer to that is yes. And on the subject of this special planning document, we knew when we passed JLP 1 that there were going to be such documents and they were going to address specific areas of concern. Poultry farming is one that we've still got to look at. But the first one, this one, affordable housing, is exactly what this is about. It's about what is defined as affordable housing. I think it's actually a very good report. If you have a chance, it's worth looking through the tracked change version and the responses from some of the consultees. There's some interesting stuff there. What people asked for, what they didn't get, I found very interesting. But yes, this can work. We have to make it work, and that's what it's there to do. It's to guide the planning committees and make JLP a better document. So I'm going to be voting for it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Or Councillor Saw?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, one of the things that I find quite enlightening about this is the fact that shared ownership now makes up half of affordable houses funding. And earlier this year, a government select committee said that shared ownership schemes are desperately failing. They fail to deliver an affordable route to home ownership. Many people are subject to rising rents. There are uncapped service charges and a disproportionate exposure to repairs and maintenance costs. I find it unfortunate that we have to depend on shared ownership to deliver some of our affordable housing provision. I am presuming it is because it's the only game in town. I feel it is absolutely vital that this government finds the funding to help organisations, social housing companies and ourselves to build more social housing. Otherwise, there is not a cat's chance in hell, I'll get there, of us actually, of this government making the 1.5 million. We're living in an Alice in Wonderland world. It is unfortunate that we have to go down the shared ownership route. I don't think it delivers for residents. So I am, strangely enough, looking forward to the white paper in some ways to see whether there is a route for local authorities like ourselves to do what we should do, and that's build more houses.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to join the debate, or can we move to the vote? Thank you. Councillor Davis, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that in response to Councillor Holt's point about is this a break on growth, this isn't a break on growth. As I've said, this is an attempt to get housing that's more suited to the needs in our area. What is a break on growth is the lack of skills that Councillor Hurren has referred to, and the fact that the developers hold back the supply of the houses. That is the break on growth. We've already got lots of permissions that have been granted that have just not been built out. That's the break on growth, not this supplementary planning document.
Thank you. I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Riley, may I take your vote, please? Councillor Riley?
Against.
Thank you. Thank you, members. There's 20 votes for, 1 against and 2 abstentions. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's carried.
Suffolk Intensive Livestock and Poultry Farming Supplementary Planning Document for adoption. I'd like to invite Councillor Sally Davis, Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendation in the report. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Policy LP14 of the adopted Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Joint Local Plan sets out a framework for the consideration of intensive livestock and poultry unit proposals for the district. The policy seeks to support this specific agricultural sector wherever it is considered appropriate, whilst ensuring significant consideration is given to environmental protection as well as the well-being of people. This supplementary planning document provides detailed information and guidance for assessing the impacts of these intensive livestock and poultry unit proposals to ensure that matters can be considered early on in the planning application process. For example, impacts on residential amenity, environmental receptors, water, landscape and the highway network. The document was subject to public consultation between May and June of this year, and as with the Housing SPD, amendments were made to the document as a result of this process. Members will be able to see the details of the comments made and the resulting changes in the appendices to this report. So I'm pleased to recommend the adoption of this intensive livestock and poultry supplementary planning document for use in determining planning applications in the district. In addition to the published papers, I'd like to introduce the further recommendation in the added papers, which will enable officers to tidy up any typing errors. So this document will help to ensure that the planning policies in Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Joint Local Plan are effectively implemented. So I recommend the adoption of this SPD in line with the recommendation 3.1 and the additional recommendation 3.2 in the report. Thank you.
Did you wish? Yeah, but before you ask a question, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Derek Davis. Thank you. Councillor Rees?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. May I just ask a question, please, about the wider planning context on page 205.3.1? The councils recognise that over recent years there have been numerous planning applications submitted for both new and for the expansion to existing intensive livestock and poultry units. Please may I ask how many years we're talking about here and how many of such applications there have been in Babergh? Thank you.
I will obviously ask the officers to answer that question if they can.
We're talking about really the past 5 years, and it's predominantly in Mid-Suffolk district.
No. Sorry, so how many in Babergh?
I'd have to look at that and come back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I please ask what measures are being implemented within the SPD to mitigate the environmental impacts associated with intensive livestock and poultry farming? Thanks.
The vast majority of the measures in this report are, well, they're in the report because the whole report is really, the whole document is aimed at mitigating environmental and social protections. I don't know if there's anything that we want to particularly point out. It's quite a technical document, isn't it? Is there anything in particular that we want to point out, Robert?
Thank you, Chair. So effectively section 5 of the SPD deals with the measures in more detail, but effectively what we're trying to do is implement policy LB14 of the Joint Local Plan and ensure that environmental considerations are addressed early on in the planning process so there can be appropriate mitigation and consideration given as these proposals develop effectively. So for example, ensuring that water quality is good, ensuring that consideration is given to odour and the effects it has on residential amenity. There's also aspects around highways and the use of smaller roads, for example, so ensuring effective lorry routing. But it's all set out in section 5 effectively.
Thank you, Chair. I've read through the text and I appreciate some form of confirmation of what we interpret as being intensive livestock, and are we differentiating between both poultry and pigs, because it's difficult to understand if there's any definition between the two, or are we using the DEFRA fallback position for what is intensive livestock?
I'll ask Robert, will know the answer to that, no doubt.
Thank you, Chair. It's set out in paragraph 1.2 of the SPD on page 201 of your pack. So effectively that defines what is defined as intensive livestock and poultry farming, but we also look at cumulative impacts. So there may be a proposal that's under that limit, but cumulatively it goes over that. So that's what we're effectively trying to do through the planning process.
Please, Chair. Yeah, I've read that point. What probably is my sort of concern is it would be quite easy to confuse what is a significant sort of industrial size expansion of an existing unit and or the impact that would have on people that already have intensive livestock facilities within Babergh, because a lot of this sort of talks towards the issues of water and the issues that creates for the water company that restricts water supplies, which I can't remember. But it's important that we understand what the impacts are, because it is quite wide-ranging, and for people in the farming industry, which is quite topical at the moment, we need to be mindful of what the challenges are for them.
Councillor Derek Davis.
Yeah, I fully support this SPD for the obvious reasons, the importance of it within the JLP. I'm speaking a little bit with my portfolio hat on in terms of the economic growth. Agriculture, the whole farming industry is so important to our district, and it really needs to be supported fully as it is in this document to make it easier for farmers and landowners to understand what they can do and also their responsibilities, because they live among us, and we, you know, so exactly the question that Councillor Carter asked, we need to be aware of the impact that it has, but it also has a hugely positive impact in terms of economic growth, employment opportunity and food production. And we need to help farmers as much as we can, because at the moment they're suffering a really tough time. They've had it, well, even worse since Brexit, you know, the damage that's caused, the world stage, the issues on that. We know that's there, and other factors that are now affecting farmers. I know people won't have sympathy for the millionaire landowners and farmers and things like that, but they're so important to our district, and this is an excellent document, so I fully support it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I would certainly fully agree with Councillor Davis's assertion of the importance of our very greatly suffering farmers at the moment. And yes, there are certainly implications of economic implications for the sector with these particular kinds of units. I, however, would like to have seen a little bit more about encouraging regenerative farming, as suggested by Suffolk County Council in the consultation document that was the appendix of the consultees. We're normally very good at indicating where we want to encourage good practice, and of course the Code of Good Agricultural Practices that is mentioned in this document certainly is one of those. But I think I'd have liked to have seen a little bit more encouraging people in the sector. We don't have that many people who are applying for this stature of industry in this district. We have smaller units, and I think it would be good to encourage people to have smaller units rather than say, we want this sort of thing, but we want it done this way. I think we ought to have added a little bit more to encourage the kind of farming practices that we have in Babergh. I think this has been driven solely by the imperatives of Mid-Suffolk District Council rather than Babergh, and I think we've been left out of it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Davis, would you like to add? And we'll go to the vote.
I've not got anything to say to add to it, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll now ask Acting Head of Governance Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Riley, may I take your vote, please? Against. Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 21 votes for, 1 against and 1 abstention, Chair, so that is carried.
Thank you very much. We now move to agenda item 12. Paper BC 2429, which is the draft timetable of meetings for 2025-2026. I'd like to invite Councillor Saw, Leader of the Council, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendations therein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. BC 2429, draft timetable of meetings from May 2025 to April 26. This is to agree the timetable of council meetings, cabinet meetings and committee meetings so that members and officers can plan their diaries and committee meetings, etc., can be quorate. You will note that in the draft timetable in May there is note of the county council elections. So I would like to propose this timetable of meetings to enable officers to plan going forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor McCraw. We now move to questions. As always, you can ask as many as you want, but it must be a question and relevant to the paper. Any questions? Councillor Holt.
Did you consider bringing the cabinet meetings forward to 9:30, or do Mid Suffolk have a closure on that one? Because I think certainly, from my personal point of view, 9:30 in the morning would be far better for me to try and attend to cabinet than 4 o'clock towards the middle or the end of a working day, which is somewhat difficult if you are working.
Councillor Saw.
I have to say, Councillor Holt, that I did not, but I will take your comments under advisement and discuss them with the officers and with Mid Suffolk. I'm sure Mid Suffolk will be as flexible as possible. Of course, many other members may not see 9:30 as a suitable time, given that they might have other responsibilities such as childcare, working, etc. But as always, I will take your point of view and discuss it further.
Thank you. Any other questions? Can we move to debate? No, we'll go straight to the vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress.
Approved.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Riley. Thank you, members. That's 23 votes for, so that's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well done. Now, we were due to have councillor appointments, but with agreement of the proposer of this and the leader and deputy leader, we will bring it to full council next month. Okay. So we have not, well, motions on notice? None. Okay. We now move to the exclusion of the public, which term includes the press. To consider whether, pursuant to Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public should be excluded from the meeting for the business specified below, on the grounds that if the public were present during these items, it is likely that there would be the disclosure to them of exempt information as indicated against each item. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Busby, seconder.
So I propose we don't exclude them. Since it's only a confirmation of the minutes.
Then you can't debate or change, you have to accept as they are. If the rest of council wishes that, agrees with you, yeah, go to the vote.
Chair, I don't agree.
You don't agree?
Should we vote?
So I need a proposer for closed session. Councillor Ward, and a seconder, please. Councillor Parker. Right. The governance officer will confirm when the live stream has been stopped and that all persons not permitted to be present have left the room. We go to the vote. Show of hands. I never know whether I'm coming or going. Right, that's 4. Okay.
Thank you, members. That's, I think that's carried. Thank you.